All right, and now it's time for my favorite part of the week when I get to chat with Rob Bolton for our weekly segment here, talking a little worldwide technology championship. Rob, before we were coming on, you were asking me where I'm at. We're
Yeah.
in the new PGA Tour studio space, which just opened up to a lot of our employees. We will have a podcast studio, not quite ready yet, but so for now, you have to deal with the white background. But pretty soon, I think we're gonna have a new swanky setup that at least we'll be able to do a podcast from. So I'm excited
Well,
for that.
nothing gets whiter than this guy in Arizona. I tell you what, somehow I make that happen. But when you have an inside job, that's a lot easier. And the Irish skin, that does not hurt. I'm really happy for you guys. I cannot wait to see what you do with it.
3 weeks left of the FedEx Cup fall here. We head to Bermuda after Mexico this week, and then it all concludes at the RSM Classic. So we're getting down to it in terms of status and eligibility for the top 125 for that Aon Next 10 that gets guys into the signature events to begin 2025. As you're looking at these weeks, both just betting, prognosticating, and just how you think a tournament might go, how are you factoring in where guys may stand and the pressure that may bring and whether that could be a positive or negative? How do you kind of assess all that as we start to get down the stretch here?
Keep it simple, silly. The guys that are pretty much set for their jobs, they're chasing the Aon Next 10 if they're not in the signature events. I mean, that's the obvious thing. Max Greyserman in the field again this week. He's the board favorite in Mexico. He's in all the signature events. What's he playing for? Well, he's not a winner yet on the PGA Tour. That's a pretty good target. For him, it's pretty simple why he's out there this week. And then there are the guys who are just outside the top 60. Patton Kizzire comes to mind, won the Pro Core Championship in this field. He's set for membership for another 2 years because of the win. He's in the Centuries and the Masters, he's in the PGA Championship, but he's 74th in the FedEx Cup. He played the season on conditional status. So he's kind of an easy investment. He's endorsed in my work this week, but an easy investment in the terms of he doesn't really have any pressure other than self-inflicted pressure to get inside that bubble of the next 10. So that's obviously a curious storyline for him. And then the guys who are really up against the pressure of all pressure to retain their jobs, getting into the next 10, Aon Next 10 would be a bonus at this point. And somebody's going to do it. It happened last year a couple of times. It's going to happen. We don't know who it's going to be, but in terms of going into this week specifically, I don't mind the guys who have the little bit of the pressure off. They can play with singular focus. It's not a difficult trip to get down to Cabo San Lucas, but it's not the easiest thing either to do this at this time of year. Certainly, they've had it planned. I'm not saying it's a cakewalk by any means, but the fact that they still committed, the guys that don't have as much pressure still committed, and they're down there and they're chasing something that's better or bigger than what they've already achieved. I'm really interested in that at this time of year.
And you mentioned him, Max Greyserman kind of headlines the field now. Maybe the biggest name, just as of a little bit of before this recording, has dropped out. That was Cameron Young, has withdrawn. So now that opens up the field even a little bit more. Even if Cam Young wasn't playing the best, he was obviously going to take a lot of the oxygen and attention just of this week down there as one of the at least highest world ranking guys. But Max Greyserman, my God, I like to see him lead an odds sheet in his rookie season after his first couple months on tour. That would have felt insane. But if you look over the last 3 months, Max Greyserman's gaining almost 2 shots per round on the field. That's better than Xander Schauffele over that same amount of time. The only people better than him over these last 3 months have been Scotty Scheffler, Sam Burns, and Hideki Matsuyama. So this is heady territory that Max Greyserman is in. It's incredible to see the rise he's on. And so I think I was surprised when I saw his name at the top of the odds. But then as I started digging into the numbers, I was like, this is very, very deserved for him at this point in the season.
I chuckle only because it's true. I mean, those numbers are sort of ridiculous. He's a rookie. He really didn't do much for the first X number of months. And here he is at the top of the board. He reminds me of amateur Luke Clanton, who was at the top of a board a few months ago over the summer. The board is the board relative to the field, and you respect that. And the house wants to stay in business and all that. Max Greyserman is, as I always say, he's the shiniest new toy right now. So bettors and gamers of all kinds are going to want out there want to go play with that. And so at 14-1, as you and I are speaking at BetMGM on this Wednesday, well, now with Young gone, the top 3 guys plus are not winners on the PGA Tour. And I broke this down in the Golfbet Insider on Wednesday. How so many of the shortest odds are non-winners. It's a great week to reach. And throughout this FedEx Cup fall, 3 guys have been 100 to 1 or longer. Nico Echevarria was 200 to 1 when he won the Zozo Championship 2 weeks ago. Greyserman makes sense more as a top 10, top 5 if you want to reach for it, but I don't mind the reach this week. Again, I think, and this I haven't advised this at all in the betting board just because the way the construct of the fields have been playing out in the FedEx Cup fall specifically. I come from a different background when it comes to gaming. You pick one winner. There can be only one winner. Don't hedge. But this week, because you want to win some money and because of the way the FedEx Cup fall has been playing out and the way the course El Cardinal at Diamante plays and really makes available everybody the opportunity to score, just like Black Desert Resort did 4 weeks ago. Reach deep into the board for some triple-digit odds and multiply across. The idea there is to be responsible for your units as always. So not adding to your usual stable of units, but using those units in the outright market because you're not going to get a lot of value. Greyserman for a top 10 is not going to be much of a kickback. So you're going to go with the top 5, maybe, but there's going to be more value down that board. So Greyserman, an incredible story, still non-winner. If he wins, he still is not necessarily, rookie of the year, but it could happen. He's still 3 tournaments to go, and he's a hot ticket right now. Love the story, and the fact that he's playing as well as how you described it really is bananas.
Yeah, and just to close the loop, hasn't missed a cut since the RBC Canadian Open in June. Finishes second at the 3M Open, second at the Wyndham Championship, runner-up at the Zozo as well. So I think guys like Matt McCarty, guys like Nick Dunlap, we've seen just win basically first time in contention, first time on the big stage. It's not usually how these things go. Usually you get your heart broken once or twice and you learn from it. And Max has been right in the thick of it recently, playing very, very well. So it makes a lot of sense why he's at the top of the odds board. Would not be shocked to see him up there again. Let's go down the odds just a little bit, actually just one spot. That's Doug Ghim, currently one of the favorites as well. If you were to contrast that to the power rankings, he's not there. So Rob, I need you to explain yourself so far. Doug Ghim, where is he at? Why are we maybe not as high on Doug Ghim as the rest of the odds makers would be?
First of all, Paul, you bring up getting your heart broken. I thought we were going to leave my high school love life out of this today, pal. Doug Ghim, let's get back to business here. He's in the other notables. I'm touting him for plus 100 for top 20. I was absolutely just stupefied that he was second, or now second. He was third at the time before Cam Young withdrew. I mean, I love Doug Ghim. He's paid off in the top 40 market. When BetMGM's had a top 30 market, that's been nice. But the top 40 market, he's been money. He's been plus value for most of the time. And, he keeps you from having, your heart broken often enough. But he has one top 10 in the last X number of months. He's had one top 20 in the last 8 months. He's had 4 top 10s in his career out of 140 starts as a professional. I see him just contending on a shorter course, to be honest with you. It's not that he can't go out and golf his ball this week, but to win, no thank you. And the top 20 was even a reach, and he's only plus 100. So, again, he's a type of value that jumps off the page as we're looking at it. Certainly for fantasy purposes, he's going to be a choice in those circles. But for betting specifically, again, I'm looking at deeper value for guys who are a little more speculative, and he's just not that right now.
The numbers would kind of love him to an extent. Like, I think top 20 in strokes gained total this season, but there's just these guys we see sometimes where they lurk around that top 20 mark. They're not in that top 10 a lot. That could be for a number of constraints. Distance is a frequent one. They just don't have the top level distance to push themselves in that upper echelon. They do a lot of things well, but distance is, at this point in the game, really a prerequisite to success. So those guys are always hard for me to place because I like the numbers. I like the data. I look at Doug Ghim and I say strokes gained total, 18th. Like, that's one of the best in the field. He's just played well in Vegas, and that would give me the recipe. But some of these guys just don't put themselves in contention a lot. So I imagine that can be tough when you're betting because there's kind of those conflicting factors at it.
Yeah, I don't for betting purposes specifically, I don't like when guys string together the top 20s. They just dilute their value. It's the guy like Nico Echevarria, who I wrote about this week. He was in the top of the power rankings for for the Myrtle Beach Classic for the reasons listed. He missed the cut. And what does he do? Wins Zozo. Kurt Kitayama's in that lane. The guys, they don't play well most of the time, and then boom. Cameron Champ atop my sleepers this week at 100 to 1. I mean, that's what you're looking for in a week like this. A guy who can hit it anywhere. He missed only 6 fairways here last year, and it's funny because he still was like T49 in fairways hit. So it's not even the ranking. It's just that it didn't matter. And so guys who played well at Black Desert, there's a correlation to playing well this week. That was the narrative entering Black Desert Championship in my work. It played out as expected. The greens were unfamiliar. Putting was difficult. It should improve once those guys go back and start to learn some of those undulations. That's the way it typically works out. This is only the second year at this week's course, the Tiger Woods design. So there's going to be a little bit more of a knowledge there, but that field's going to turn over pretty good every year anyway because of who's in it. So it's sort of a wide open affair. So Doug Ghim, nice pick. Won't let you down, but he's not going to bring it home like you would in other circles. Certainly to win, it only, again, just for the record, as we're speaking, only 22 to 1 to win Doug Ghim. That's nice for him, but that's not great for us.
Defending champion, a little farther down on that list, that's Erik van Rooyen. I think a lot of emotion returning here. Obviously, many people would remember last year winning that back nine, sizzling, I think 28 that he shot on the final 9, kind of playing in memory and inspired by his college best friend, John Trasimar. I wrote about that this week on the site. If you're looking for a little bit more info on the scholarship that they've started in his name to college golfers. But when it comes to EVR on the course this week, I think there'll be a lot of stuff in his head, a lot going on just as a defending champion. But I want you to talk about Erik van Rooyen, what you think of him this week, but then also kind of use that as a gateway to talk about when this is just the second year of a tournament at a course. Horses for courses is easy because you just pick Erik van Rooyen. He was the guy that won last year. But when we have so little data of a course, how you go about assessing just 1 year of results?
Well, first of all, it wouldn't be a Talk of the Tour with Paul Hodowanic hosting unless we talked about EVR. The connection.
Got to.
It's legendary. Yeah. Yep. I would have at the end.
Make sure we got it in. Fellow gopher. Yep.
What a story. And EVR's been able to sustain solid form throughout this year. He's even gotten better in the world ranking. I mean, this is who we know him to be when he's healthy. And he had the injury a few years ago. He became a father. He played really well around that, but then balanced out his life. Now he's balancing that outside the ropes, and he's able to reconnect with the kind of form we expect over time inside the ropes. And it's great for everybody. It's a win-win-win. It's hard not to be a fan of the guy and all these things. And what he did last year was something we'll always remember. As far as the course, horses for courses, just a note on that. It's really about the course fit. And again, I mean, Ben Everill and I had this conversation a little about Black Desert, where I was in on Lucas Glover because he's a ball striker, and long-hitting ball strikers tend to do well on courses where the greens are unfamiliar. And although it took a really solid final round, Glover podiumed for that with a T3. It's the same expectation this week, even though it's the second year down there in Mexico. Again, greens are somewhat unfamiliar. They're going to be running a little bit slower this year, half foot slower at 11 on the stimp if they can get it to that. Winds should cooperate really well, and on the weekend they may actually be able to open it up a little bit more because it's supposed to die down. So keep an eye on that if you're in a live betting situation. Moving day could be electric. So look further down on the board for live odds to win on that. Scoring is going to be super low, and we go back to sort of that original pressure. Guys get off to hot starts, suddenly they can sort of play freer. But they're still in the back of their head. They don't want to play too hard and then maybe ruin it, an opportunity that they've just set up. So we're going to learn a lot about those guys in real time and very quickly as this tournament starts on Thursday. It's just about the fit. And again, I just think that the ball strikers play up on a course like this. The guys who've seen the greens, even if they did not play well last year, experience is experience, even within failure. So they'll take that forward because they're professionals. And we may see some surprises. EVR, of course, would not be one of them. That he's all the way down at number 6 in the power rankings is more respectful for the guys who are 1 through 5.
Yeah, I think EVR won last year at 29 or 27 under, something pretty ridiculous. I don't think the wind is really expected to get up much this week in Cabo, so I would expect very, very low scores again this week. Take that into account as you're talking about betting and who you may side with here. I want Before we go, I got to talk about number one in the power rankings. It wouldn't be a segment if we didn't at least mention who's leading that. That'd be Harris English, which I believe he's got, at least at the odds I'm looking at, maybe the 8th best odds or somewhere around there. So he's in that mix, but maybe not all the way up there. What has intrigued you about how Harris has played and how you believe he might play this week?
We talked about Max Greyserman at 14-1, talked about Doug Ghim at 22-1. Cameron Young was in there for a moment. The debate there is there really a prohibitive favorite? I don't know. I mean, the board
I wouldn't say
says
there is. Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, the board is the board, but the anecdotal sort of review of it and just putting experienced eyes on it, I don't think so. I mean, I've had some of this in the FedEx Cup fall, and that's what's made it exciting from a results standpoint, but also really attractive from a betting standpoint. That's the advice, to dive into that board. You just might get lucky, and we've seen a lot of that. So that said, the number one of the power rankings, that's a coveted position. Let's be respectful of it. Certainly, I've had non-winners atop the power rankings over the years. Harris English, not a non-winner, multiple-time winner on the PGA Tour, and he's won on Paspalum over at Mayakoba. Now, many, many years ago, but he's familiar on the surface. El Cardinal is blanketed with Paspalum, and English does not necessarily have to play, but he's still chasing his own targets. There are certain stats that don't get reported as much just because they're not as sexy. Harris English, as a terrific putter, is one of them. It still matters to us just as much as all of the others. So in a field like this, where it's going to be a shootout and a guy that you can count on who's done it before on this type of surface, that's the number one of the power rankings. Lucas Glover at number 2, just to add him for a second. I mentioned the T3 at Black Desert. Same sort of setup. He could have been number one of the power rankings. No one would have complained about it. He's at T3, in fact, upon arrival. We've seen this sort of jump from him before, and that would have made a lot of sense as well. So if you want to go 1A, 1B, it doesn't matter. They're 1, 2. Again, these are guys, we know who they are. They're not going to be super long odds, but they're a little more reliable if you play conservatively.
All right. Well, I think we covered it pretty good. I'm sure the winner, the way the fall's going, the winner will not be someone we've chatted about. Probably won't be in the power rankings. It's been an unpredictable fall. Lots of fun stories. We got 3 weeks left to decide this thing the rest of this season. I'm excited to keep checking back with you as we draw closer. Rob, thanks so much.
You got it, buddy. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.